Fantasy Philosophers is brought to you by fantasy-info.com.
Throughout the early part of this summer, you may have noticed on the website that we've been putting out player rankings for every single player that we have. We think that is noteworthy, at least, for this season. We got about 40 quarterbacks. I believe there's about 90 receivers. There's a bunch of everybody and everything. But the one thing that we do have here, now that we are getting into the end of June, is we're going to have updates throughout the summer, because there's always information changing, there's always things going on, and that's going to change some values. So that is why the Fantasy Philosophers, we've decided to create an update section. So every once in a while, maybe once a week or so, we're going to just drop you a line on some of the updates and values that are changing here, some of the information that has changed since we've written our articles on some of the players. The 5 things that we're going to go over today, mainly it's all about receivers here, folks, is first the Packers. We got receiver updates here. Second, we're going to have to talk about Steve Smith and his fractured arm. Third, we've got Wes Welker and Julian Edelman, that situation. Johnny Knox and Devin Aromashadu. And finally, Vincent Jackson and a player that's up and coming here, Legadou Nene. So let's start with the Green Bay Packers. Donald Driver obviously has the knee injuries. We talked about that on his podcast. But the thing that I want to make a point of here is it looks like, with him, he may drop down. He may not be relevant this season. So Jordy Nelson has had a fabulous camp this year. His value is bumped up. We thought first maybe James Jones would be the guy that would be the clear guy to take over if something should happen to Driver and he cannot rebound from these knee problems at 35 years old. But now it looks like Nelson may be the guy. Remember, Jones has had trouble with drop balls, and I thought, originally that might help Nelson if he were to push him. Looks like that's happening, so we'll keep you updated on that as we move along. With Greg Jennings, we're going to bump him up into the top 10 receivers again. We had him down around 15. We're going to pull him back up to 10 because he's a proven talent. And with Driver, if he does pull out and he's slow this year, I think he's going to at least be slow, folks. But he probably will lose that starting job at some point here. Nelson and Jones, very talented players, but they're not proven yet. We need to see him take that next step, and Jennings is a proven talent. I don't like his touchdown total from last year. That's why I had him knocked. But at the same time, we got to give him some respect in his dues, and he is a talent, so we're moving him back up. Second area we have to talk about, Steve Smith, fractured arm. This is not good, obviously. He broke this in December. We talked about that. And now here you go. Every summer we have to have a Steve Smith update on injuries or punching the junk out of some teammate or whatever he does. But anyway, Steve Smith, another thing coming down the pike here. And so with the arm, it looks like he should be still a go for week 1. We're not really going to rank him anywhere outside of the top 20 receivers. We've had him around 15 to 20. We're going to keep him right there. But this is definitely something you have to consider. He should be fine by the time the season starts again. But you're going to have to keep this in mind, and I think it's just going to come down to how you feel about him. If he's falling down the boards a little bit and you can just get him at a value, I mean, if he's getting closer to that 6th, 7th round, maybe even slipping in there because people are concerned, then maybe he's a really nice value in 10, 12 team leagues at that point in the game. So keep that in mind with Smith. With Welker and Edelman, that's our third section. At first, there was a real big bandwagon jump that Welker might be back to start maybe even the season or even just after a couple games here because he was back practicing in June. Now Bill Belichick has even come out and says, he's on track to play at some point this season. So keep that in mind. He did have a torn ACL the final game of the season. He had to wait till February because those knees, I've got family members that have had that injury, and boy, that knee will swell up really big, and it does take a while for it to swell down. And so that's what happened to Welker, and it took him till February until he had that surgery. So it's going to be, this year he's got a lot of road to recovery. So look for Edelman to be a pick that you can take and start right away. He may even be the starter for the first half of the season. We'll just have to see how Welker recovers. But again, like Belichick said, he'll be back at some point this season. So right now, keep those things in mind. The fourth thing that we want to cover here is Johnny Knox, Devin Aromashadu. Ton of talk this offseason about Devin Aromashodu being a fantasy sleeper. And I thought that he would probably be a clear guy to start. I know they wanted to push him to be a starter, but it is just not happening right now, folks. Yes, we are in June, so we got to keep seeing things happening and see where it rolls. But Johnny Knox is the one who's stepping up. Remember, Devin Hester looks to be the starter. The opposite side, it's Devin and Johnny Knox that are fighting it out for the other starting job, and Johnny is clearly beating him right now. He's probably a better route runner, and in Mike Martz's offense, that means everything, because you cannot, if you do not run precise routes in that offense, that Air Coryell offense, you can forget it, and your quarterback's going to be throwing a lot of picks, and Jay obviously had issues with that. So with Johnny, he's moving up the boards. He's becoming a true fantasy sleeper right now if he continues to do this. And a guy like Devin Aromashodu right now, I still hold out hope for him, but he's becoming more of a deep sleeper really now, as he may not start the season as a starter. I still think if he does get an opportunity, if somebody's not effective, he could be the best touchdown maker in the receiving core for this team. But again, that's going to make him a deep sleeper if he's not going to start the season, folks. So keep that in mind with Johnny Knox and Devin Aromashodu. And finally, Vincent Jackson. We had him originally as the 6th best fantasy receiver to take this year, but now, with the suspension possibly looming on him, and he's obviously has the big holdout, I'm not usually huge on that at this point in the game. Remember, guys like Brandon Marshall, Anquan Bolden, they were crying for a trade around June, July last season, or wanting something done. Nothing happened until the next offseason, and more often than not, at this time of year, that tends to be the case. Even a guy like Albert Haynesworth, he probably isn't going to get moved. He'll probably play this year and then maybe get moved next year. So these things tend to happen more in March than they tend to happen in June or July. So I figured Jackson will still be there, but a guy like Legadou Nene is a guy that could get an opportunity to start for the Chargers if Jackson does have the holdout. The suspension, no matter what. And then if they trade the guy, hey, there's really not much there. They brought in, Josh Reed. At best, he's a slot man. I know Craig Buster Davis is doing some things, but he still has migraine. He's still getting injured. A lot of injuries. He's been a total bust up to this point. Nene would be the guy next in line, so keep that name in mind for your drafts. But, we still have a ways to go here. It's at the end of June, but these are some of the updates that we need to refresh you on. And be on the lookout for our second update that should be coming again in a week or two from now, as we'll update you on some of the new relevant information that's coming out. So you can also check out on the website, fantasy-info.com. We'll have the updates right there for you, right there around the draft board section of the site, where we have all our player rankings. Again, we have about close to 300 player rankings this season for you. We also have them available on YouTube, iTunes, and those type of things as well in our Fantasy Philosophers podcast section. So good luck this season, and we'll keep you updated across the summer.
For more fantasy football information, go to fantasy-info.com and sign up for our free e-newsletter. Good luck in your 2010 Fantasy Football League. As an added bonus, the Fantasy Info guys will include their 5 secret tips for success in fantasy football.